Okay. Okay. Hey y'all. It's Amanda with Tap Mom and the Baby Brigade. We're back for part 2 of our loom hat tutorial. This is where we are so far. This is the brim that we looked at earlier. This is where we are so far. I want to hold that up and let y'all see that is this is the knit purl all the way around, many rows to get this brim. I didn't count the rows, but this is what it looks like on this side, and this is the very beautiful ribbed look you'll get on that right, the proper side. This is what's known as the ribbed brim look here. Now I like a nice, wide brim on these hats. Now you may choose to do just a regular, knitted brim where you just knit so far and then pull it up and fold it over and then knit the rest of your hat. There's nothing wrong with that. When I'm doing the hat not hate hats, that's what I do, just as in a means to get the hat made. So that's completely up to you how you want to do that. So but what I've done now, and I'll show you, I've added the and it broke right off, didn't it? Goodness. Okay, well, this is going to be fun if that's the, oh boy. Okay, well, these things happen. And so again, I'm going to attempt to tie this. This is the only time I've ever dealt with fluffy yarn in hats is I used the latte cakes. Now latte cakes is a bit more it's got a bit more to it than this. It's a thicker consistency than this. This is really thin, but I'm going to attempt this again, and because when I did it with the latte cakes, and I also did 2 strands like this, when I got past the brim part, I would just tie a knot of my fluffy yarn around, and I try to get it as close to the bottom of my starting spot as I could, and just tie I guess I'm going to have to be more gentle with this yarn. I didn't realize it was that brittle. That's the word I was looking for. I didn't realize it was that brittle. So, knowing that now, I'm going to try a more gentler knot. And I'm just going to kind of slide it down where I want it to go, because now that I know that it's a brittle yarn, I'm going to do that and just slide that. And then what I'll have to do is just be very gentle with my wrapping. And so what we're going to do now, remember when we e-wrapped to cast on to our loom, we just did an e-wrap and then a flipped over the bottom loop over the top loop, and that give us our cast on. Well, what we're going to do now is we're going to just do a regular knit for the rest of the hat, now that we have our beautiful brim. So, and we want the top, the body of our hat to have this, added fluff to it. I don't know what else do you call it other than fluff. But we want it to have a little bit of frizz to it, a little bit of a halo, and to give it that extra little cute touch. But this yarn apparently is very brittle, so you're going to have to, if you decide to get this, of course, is now 3 strands. You got your 2 strands of the basic, the Premier Basic Mosaic, which is gorgeous and is worked up beautifully. This is my first time, using the yarn that I bought from them, and it's not a problem. No splitting, nothing. It's wonderful. And then we got the very brittle sweet Mayflower Sweet from Hobby. So obviously this yarn is very brittle, so I'm going to be very gentle in my wrapping of it, but I'm going to go ahead and because this is my anchor point. Remember, we talked about that, to avoid laddering and having your stitches look wonky. You just want to go behind where I left off here. So I'm going to go behind here, and I'm just going to go ahead and wrap. And I'm going to go all the way around my loom. Pardon me. That was unavoidable. Okay, so I'm just going to wrap like we did before. And I'm going to wrap all my pegs, but I'm going to be very gentle because this yarn is very brittle. And so, seeing as that we know that, we're going to be very gentle. And remember, as we talked about, this is not a race. This is not a life or death situation. We're just simply making a hat. And that's all we're doing. We're just making a hat. Hopefully a very pretty hat. And I'm just going to do this right here. And I did unravel some yarn off of that little ball that they gave me of that. Let's see here. And the skeins of the Premier yarn is perfect. They come in, it pulls out of the skein perfectly, right along rhythmically with my use of it. And so very little tugging involved. So if I could afford it, I'd switch all my regular acrylic to basics, Premier Basic, because I'm enjoying this yarn big time. It's very tightly wound too. Okay, so now I'm back at my beginning peg. So knowing that this yarn is brittle, when we hook over for our knit stitch, we want to take that into consideration. So what we're going to do is take all of our stitches and on the bottom stitch, and we're just going to hook over, and we're going to do that all the way around. And then we're going to gently push the one we flipped over down, because that's the new stitches with the fuzz yarn on it. And we want to be kind of gentle because we don't want to break it. We want it to stay in line with our yarn so that it can be showcased in the hat. We want that mohair look, because it's not mohair, it's wool. And we want it to look nice. We want it to give us a fuzzy hat look at the top to go with our beautiful pink mosaic yarn. So you might, once you get used to looming, if you're not used to looming, you will pick up speed. I'd say the brim probably took me an hour, but I am very practiced in doing the knit purl brim. So it might take you longer if you're new, but it took me about an hour, hour and a half maybe to get the brim done. I was somewhat out of practice, so I usually could knock a full hat out in about 2.5 hours, just depending on what all details I wanted in the hat. Okay, that's all right. And coming down to my last stitch. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to keep going until I get the hat to the length that I want. And that's all you're going to do from now till you get the hat as tall as you want. Now, if you want a slouchy hat, you're going to want to go as, longer. If you just want a quick little beanie like I'm going to do, then you'll do shorter. But you just have to judge. So, things on the wrong side. Anyway, but you just have to, be the judge of things yourself and decide, how you want to do it. But I'm just going to continue making rounds until I got my hat as tall as I want it to do. But I'm going to go one more round with you so that you can see what we're doing here. Remember, we got this very delicate yarn, and we're just going to E-wrap it all the way around, and then we're just going to flip this bottom loop over the top loop with our pick, okay? So again, we're going to wrap. We're doing the E-wrap stitch, but we're being very careful because we're working with very brittle yarn and this fuzzy yarn. And I can see already that this is going to be very pretty because I can see that fuzz showing up on the outside of the stitches, which is what we want. We don't want our acrylic yarn to cover up the fuzz. So that's why we're being very careful not to crush it between the acrylic yarn. We want it to kind of be the show of the, be the star of the show when it comes to how this hat looks. Because that's the whole purpose of adding this mohair looking yarn, is to give our hat an extra little bit of fuzziness. It might make it a little cozy, It's in fashion to have a little, fuzz. And knitting, loom knitting doesn't use near as much yarn as crochet. So I could probably get 2 hats, at least 2 adult hats out of these 2 skeins of yarn. Let's see here. All right, now that we're wrapped and we're back here, we're just going to gently flip the bottom loop over the top. And now to anchor, because of this brittle yarn, normally if you're having trouble anchoring and keeping your yarn wrapped around the pegs like we need it to be to do this, then I would say wrap it around the anchor peg to keep it from unraveling on you. And when I say unraveling, I mean coming unwrapped from the pegs that you just wrapped it around. But because we have brittle yarn, I just recommend you take your thumb of your non-dominant hand and just holding it gently to the loom while you go around with your other hand and doing this over, yarn over the peg. So we're just yarning over every peg and then gently pushing it down a little bit so that you can get your next round wrapped. And this is really all you're going to do for as many rounds as it takes to get your hat as long or tall as you want. You can make it a slouchy. All that's necessary to make it a slouchy is more rounds, and all to make it a beanie is to less rounds. So I like mine somewhere in between. Not quite a beanie, not quite a short a beanie, but not quite a slouchy either. I have an odd shaped head, so. But I'm just. See, normally if I was using acrylic only yarn and not this special yarn, I would just be just flip, flip, flip. Like when I do the hats for Hat Not Hate, you'd be hard pressed to keep up with what I'm doing, because I do it so fast. Because I like to get a rhythm going. One of these days I'll be this good at crocheting too. But for now, not so much. Alrighty, and we're back at our anchor peg. And here we go. I'm not sure what this one has. Probably had to cut that later. That's probably where I tied it on, but that's okay. Alright, so you see where we're going. We got, you really can't see it yet, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this here and come back when I do part 3 when I've got the hat as tall as I want to get it. So now we're just going to I'm going to keep making rounds until I get the hat as tall as I want to get it. And then when I come back, I'll have my hat as tall, as tall as I want it, and we'll take it off the loom and tie it closed at the top, and then we'll see how it came out. Okay? Thanks. See you on the last round. Bye.